Wow, what an interesting day this has been for me, to sit and watch everything. There's some benefits to being the last guy up, and then there's some things that really suck about being the last guy. The things that suck about being the last guy is that a lot of your main points have already been made. Thank God I agree with most of them. The other thing is that as I watched Tim from this earlier this afternoon, is Tim still here, by the way? Is he? Oh, there you are. You went and hid. I realized how much my presentation sucks. But here's the thing. I actually did the math, and if we actually extrapolate the whole day out, I'm in the 100% category. Because I'm the last dude. I'm the guy standing between you guys and cocktails. So, the other thing is that I noticed is that I'm going to be talking about 3 C's like Tim talked about, and in mine is content, context, and chaos. And I think what you're going to find throughout, I'm going to look at it through a very different lens than has been discussed today, although I am going to focus almost exclusively on content marketing as a process in the organization. But I'm going to touch on things that have been brought up today, and where I can remember, I'm certainly going to call attention to it. By a show of hands, because I've been sitting up here, I didn't get a chance to spin my head around for a couple of the polls. How many people here are in large organizations, work for larger B2B organizations? Did you guys all like call each other to sit over in that side of the room? And then I guess medium-sized businesses, or what is weirdly called the mid-market. I don't ever understand what the mid-market is. Okay, and then SMBs? Okay, and you guys all called each other to sit up front. And then how many agencies do we have in the room? Okay, and they all sat in the back. Right, great, okay. So, great, thank you for that. So what I'm going to be talking about is really the process of content marketing. And I'm a little torn because I really want to give another presentation right now about winding you guys up about content marketing and all of the things that the panelists were talking about in the previous 2 panels. But what I'm going to talk about today, and by the way, there's my Twitter handle. I would love to connect with all of you. I wrote a book with Joe Polizzi, a good friend of mine and now colleague at Content Marketing Institute, called Managing Content Marketing. For this gentleman over here, there is a definition of content marketing in the book. So not to pimp it too much, but Kindle version, you know, there's a lovely number of versions of the book available that has a great definition in there. This is normally the part of the talk where I would say, the world is exploding, lots of fragmented audiences, Facebook is growing by 17 jillion people per day, mobile, can we just skip this part? You guys know that things are changing, right? The audiences are more fragmented, and that content is important, and that mobile is a big deal. Apparently video is really big. And all of this is really changing the fundamental approach of how we go to market with our businesses, especially in B2B. The world is changing. I do want to call one thing out, though, because this just illustrated to me in stark contrast how much the world has changed. This is a mere 8 years ago. And the shot here is when Pope Benedict was elected. That was a weird word to say the Pope was elected. But anyway, the Pope was elected, and this is the audience out front where they were waiting for the first papal address. I want you to pay particular attention to, down here in the corner here, what looks like a phone that, I mean, does anybody have a flip phone thing anymore? But here's the flip phone down there. This was just earlier this year. So you're not competing. Your competition is not your competition for content. Your competition, the attention you are trying to grab, is from the consumer. And this is the consumer these days. We're taking pictures of our food. How many people took pictures of their food today and uploaded it to Facebook? You know you did. And this is a rock concert. I just went and saw Bruno Mars, which was an awesome show, by the way. I went and saw Bruno Mars. And this is how people stand and watch concerts now, with their phone, taping the whole thing. It's mind-blowing to me. So this is the world we now live in. What I want to stress to you, and as Chief Strategist of the Content Marketing Institute, I get the distinct pleasure of working with businesses of all sizes, from mid-market businesses to SMBs and startups to large corporations, helping them with the process of content marketing. And I can tell you right now, the era of more is over. It is not about producing 5 blog posts a day so that we can rank on SEO. It is not about churning out content because we can. It is not about churning out more product one sheets. It is not about churning out more press releases. More, making sure our jobs historically, as digital marketing has gotten its headway, has been to make sure every graph is going up and to the right. More website visits, more conversions, more email subscribers, more likes, more engagement, more page views. All of that is over. We have to focus on grabbing the attention of our consumers and holding it. And has been said elegantly throughout today by a number of the panelists and speakers, it is about grabbing attention and holding it with compelling, engaging, wonderful, amazing content for whatever nefarious purposes we may have. The true challenge today of the marketer, any CMOs in the room? No CMOs in the room? Because we're going to talk shit about them. Okay. So no CMOs in the room. The real challenge today, as us as marketing practitioners, those that actually have to get the stuff done, is to simultaneously adapt to the changing world that we live in. The fact that 7 years ago, there was no iPad. There was no Facebook unless you were a part of the college network or a high school graduate. There was no Twitter. None of this existed. What's going to exist 5 years from now? You have no idea. The way that marketing succeeds today is in our ability to adapt and change to the situation on the ground. That is the true ability. And there's no reason, or there's no surprise then, and the stats I'm about to give you come from a couple of different studies. One is from, it's totally worth a download, comes from Accenture, called the CMO in Turbulent Times, wonderful white paper that talked about how CMOs are feeling the pressure. And 70% of CMOs right now, big businesses and small businesses, are feeling the pressure. They feel like that there's a real pressure right now to be on the clock. Within the next 5 years, they have to fundamentally change the process by which they market. That means changing the entire paradigm of how marketing is actually handled in the business. They feel on the clock to do that. Half of them feel like they don't have the right people on the bus. They don't feel like they have the right skill sets. Right skill set's not coming out of college. Right skill set's not available to me. It's very, very difficult to hire for the skill sets that I need. And 70% of them feel completely unready for technology. Do we have any tech geeks in the room? Any technology people? Yay, a technology geek sitting up front. That's such a shock. Anybody? So the technology that we're dealing with in marketing, you know, Gartner wrote that report that said by the year 2015 that the CMO is going to spend more money than the CIO and blah, blah, blah. And my opinion on that is that if the CMO is spending more money than the CIO, we should all go, uh-oh. Because the technology that we have right now is way more than we have an appetite to actually deal with. So 70% of them feel unready. And yet, with all of those numbers, we feel on the pressure. Half of them feel like they don't have the right people. 70% feel like that. But yet, 3/4 of them are like, creating content experiences are going to be the most amazing, absolutely so, oh, it's going to be so unbelievable. We have to figure out how to stay relevant and engaging. They know it's hugely important. They just have no idea how they're going to get there. And that's the real challenge today. These CMOs, they're not unaware. They're not unaware that the change is happening. They're just wrong. The question isn't why or what. The question is how. How do we start adapting so that content and delivering relevant experiences to customers that are completely fragmented across all kinds of devices, audiences, all sorts of, all over the planet, really, how do we create processes that actually start to address that so that we can adapt to change, so that we're better equipped to adapt to that change? And that doesn't matter if we're a 2-person business or a 5,000-person business. That is the real question. A Gartner person recently wrote a report, which I just hated, that talked about how he thought it was a cultural thing. That the millennials that were coming out of college that were sort of the new hoodie-wearing marketers trying to get them to actually come to work on time was the real problem. This was the real problem in business. And I think that's absolutely not true. The benefit of the digital natives, the benefit of employing those people, the young people who actually understand digital, is not, it's just different. It's a completely different mind shift for the CMO and for us as marketers that have been around since the dark ages to deal with. So fear not the marketing hipster, because the world is changing whether you like it or not. So with that tee up, what I want to do is talk about how. and 3 ideas that I've seen work in businesses of all sizes. How content can be integral in creating a strategy that actually makes sense for marketing purposes. So, and I'm going to frame it in sort of 3 ideas: content, context, and the embrace of chaos. So with that, let's go into the first one, which is content. Content can be a centralizing force for marketing. It can absolutely be a centralizing force for marketing. For this new paradigm, for this fundamental shift of the way that we go to market with our businesses, B2B or B2C, but specifically in B2B, content can be that centralizing force. Here's 3 things that I've learned about working with very large organizations. Sorry, that's a little blown out, but here's 3 fundamental things that I've learned. Organizations are more siloed than ever. It used to be, and for those of you who have been in marketing for some time will identify with this, it used to be that we marketers were kind of those weird people over in the corner. Sales didn't really understand what we do. The IT people really didn't understand what we do. We were sort of the people over there that made pretty pictures and sometimes went to restaurants and all that kind of stuff and had like little getaways that talked about stuff, and occasionally we put together a pretty folder of stuff that the sales guys may or may not use. That's what marketing was to most. In many B2B organizations, still is. But now we're siloed even from ourselves. In a lot of large organizations now, we have the mobile team, we have the eCRM team, we have the social team, we have the social CRM team, we have the e-business team, we have the web team, we have the email team. We have all these teams that are creating content for all these purposes going out, and they're not working together at all. They're just not. Most organizations, the second thing, have started to realize this and said, wait a minute, this is just insanity. We're producing so much content. This is the question for the CEO. What if we stop blogging tomorrow? What the hell are we doing? We're throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall, and I don't see any of it sticking. And that's because the process isn't correct. The content isn't used as a centralizing force there. We're still in this mentality of measuring teams. We're still looking at it as, we've got the email team doing that, we've got the social team doing that, we've got the web content team doing this. We've got all these teams going, and we're being measured. And last but not least is just to sort of differentiate and contrast the B2C and B2B. What I've really learned is that as much as I thought content marketing was going to be really similar across B2C and B2B, they're really different. Content marketing, the process is very, very different in the B2B organization than it is in the B2C. And last but not least, marketing does not need or want any more technology. We suck at the technology we have, much less buying any more. Big data is not an opportunity for us right now. We are not very good at little data, much less making it bigger. I mean, how many of you, I can't tell you the number of times I have heard what was said on the panel today with regard to Marketo. Hey, how are you guys using Marketo? Oh yeah, we use it as a spam gun. That's Marketo. Web analytics. How many of you guys really use Google Analytics? Not very many people. You really, Omniture people, it's like, Adobe, the Site Catalyst, that's like, that's physics math. So, let me just put this into an example. This is a real story, Fortune 500 B2B company. And they had these teams. They had web team, they had a social team, they had a CRM team, they had a brand team, they had e-marketing, which is who we did a little work with, and they had a PR team. Very typical organization in a large B2B company. And they had technology in there. So the web team, they had a website, and they were measured on content and SEO. How can we get our rankings up? We have a whole article program just dedicated to getting our SEO on our website up. So all the how-to articles and all these wonderful articles that we're putting out. They had count them, two CMSs. 2 content management systems. Both of them implemented poorly. Then we have the social team, and they're just using Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and they're measured on likes and followers, how many likes they could get, how many followers they can get. Because why? Because likes and followers are engagement, right? It always amazes me, the people who look at likes on Facebook as engagement, because remember, if you want to go hate on something, you have to go like the page first. Ask Target about that one. CRM, Twitter, CRM community, that's where they're actually answering all these complaints on Twitter. You guys really blew it. My whole system just went up in smoke and blah, blah, blah. Well, let me just tweet you and see how that's going to work out for you. The brand team who was doing TV, radio, and strategy, They don't know from technology. They're up in the high office next to the CEO's office. All they're doing is working with the agency going, yeah, let's go check out the Super Bowl. Now, e-marketing, the blog, email, content, they're the new team. They want to put content marketing as a process integrated into this whole business. And just to not forget them, because they often do get forgotten, PR, off in the corner. Baby in a corner for sure, PR these days. Press newsroom, trying to get earned media, trying to put out press releases, trying to get earned media. I can go off on a rant about PR. I love PR. I'm a huge fan of PR. The fact that PR hasn't truly been enabled to do content marketing as a process in the organization is a crime. Any PR people here? I love PR people. I think PR people absolutely have to own the content marketing process because they used to be the corporate storytellers, and now they're the pusher of press releases. Okay, so let's come back to the e-marketing team here. So they're trying to figure out their strategy, right? How do we integrate this? How do we put this in process, this new thing into process, this new blog? So they go to the web team and they go, here's the great thing. We need a button on the front page of our website that says, click here to go to the blog. And the web team goes, yeah, no. And they go, wait a minute, what? We can't have a button? Yeah, see, here's the deal. As a team, we're measured on traffic and SEO. And if I filter off my traffic to you over on the blog, I don't get a bonus. So no button for you. And they go, okay. So they go over to the social team and they go, hey, Facebook team, we need you to post out on Facebook every time we do a new blog. And the Facebook team goes, yeah, no, I don't think so. Why? Because if we post a picture of a little kitten hang in there, baby, we get 100 likes. When we do your blog post, we get like 10, and I don't get a bonus, and so that's not going to work out. And so on and so forth. And this is the way a lot of companies are working right now. We're measuring teams instead of the content. We're measuring the performance of teams as a function of how we measure the ROI of the programs, instead of measuring content as a platform and how it performs to deliver us better insight about how we're engaging customers. And that's the way I'd like you to rethink the way you're doing content as a centralizing force. So this company actually did a really interesting thing. They actually addressed the problem. So they created this unified content process. They actually created roles within those teams responsible for the content itself. So a whole content strategy that says, I am going to be responsible for content, not for email. I am responsible for content, independent of what channel it lives on. And what we want to do is work with these people. They all had their own editorial calendars. They all have their own goals. They all have their own management styles. We're going to work with them to integrate content together so that it can be applied as a process holistically, again, independent of whatever channel it's going to live on, and we'll measure content. It seems like a duh, but it's one of those things that just, it works because it immediately gives everybody incentive to work together. And that's the crazy thing. So finding these new cross-functional roles that you can start to, and we talk about it a lot at the Content Marketing Institute, the chief content officer, the managing editor, all of these roles, they can be jobs too, but they're most often roles that are assumed by existing people in marketing, especially in B2B where there's not a lot of overhead for a room to add more teams, members to the team. Rebecca Lieb summed this up very, very well. She did a white paper with the folks at Altimeter are doing some wonderful work on this, by the way, Rebecca and Jeremiah over there. And they're talking about how content can be, and they talk about whole structures about how to create a process within an organization in their white paper. She talks about creating these structures, and a lot of people call it, content council or the editorial board or chief content officer, whatever you call it. It's basically putting content at the center and measuring the performance of content rather than the teams that are managing that content. What she talks about is how a fragmented voice leads to all kinds of badness. It basically just leads to no good. Now, the only place I disagree, and I'm not even sure Rebecca would disagree, is in the way that it's done. Because what I typically find is that most organizations are finding and stumbling their way into this rather than constructing it sort of as a proactive process. And that's a completely great way to do it. There's usually one team that's really doing this well. Maybe it's the social team, maybe it's the web team, maybe it's somebody else that's really doing a great job. Maybe it's the demand gen team, maybe it's the SEO team, whatever it is, they're doing a great job at this. Their editorial calendaring, they have processes. They can start to use those best practices to grow out. Just one quick story here. This is an actual true story, B2B technology company. They reorganized recently, and they had sales, and they had legal, and they had the whole of the CRM team, and all these different teams. and they actually forgot to reorganize marketing because they just forgot marketing. Marketing as an organization, especially in B2B organizations, is so important these days. If any of you refer to yourselves as an internal agency to your company, please stop that. Please take that away today. Stop referring yourself as, you are not in service to the organization. You are a strategic part of the organization. Marketing is a strategic part of and if you need me to quote and say that and put it in front of the CEO, I will. Marketing that reports up through sales and looks at itself as an internal support organization is no better than IT right now as an internal support organization. It is a strategic part of what you do as a business. So as you start to build those processes, build them one house at a time. Build your grid, your systems of engagement, whether it be social or web or email or all of the above. Build them one house at a time, one street at a time, and build your grid slowly. It can happen. And that brings us to 2, which is context. So this is how we purchase technology today. So content-related technology. It was brought up before, whether it was Marketo or we're thinking about web content management systems or we're thinking about blogging tools. This is how we buy as B2B organizations today content technology. So we have this really neat Venn diagram. And we have all the stuff that our CMS doesn't do. And we make a list as marketing people. We make this list of all the stuff that our CMS doesn't currently do. And then we make another list, what we wish a content management system would do. And we take those 2 lists and we start getting demos. And the technology companies come in and they start demoing all this cool stuff that we've never seen before. It's really awesome, the sexy, cool vendor. And so what do? We make a spreadsheet. And we take that spreadsheet and we send it out to all the vendors. And as Tim said, we all expect the half moon or the quarter moon or the scale of 1 to 5 in the spreadsheet. And we're shocked when all the vendors come back with 5s. We can do everything that you need us to do. And so then, how do we actually buy? Well, the first thing we realize is that that's a unicorn. The spreadsheet doesn't exist. So where the CMS doesn't do stuff and we have a wish list, well, that's our rationalization to the CFO. When we finally find the guy who actually, as Tim said, worked the 20% or the 60% of figuring out the vision, that sales guy who we love and trust with everything, that's the one we buy. But our rationalization to the CFO is that it does everything our CMS doesn't do and does all the stuff that we want a CMS to do. And then the stuff that's on our wish list, but the sexy, cool new features, well, we're going to wait for phase 2 on that. And phase 2 never comes, by the way. Phase 1.5 rarely comes. And then the last thing, all the stuff that the CMS doesn't do, but the sexy, new, cool features, we just don't even understand all that stuff, so we're just going to leave it over here. And that's the way we buy technology today. And what I want to suggest is that we should think about a new way to approach content-related technology as it applies to all of the channels that we're managing, whether it's web or email or all of those things. We need to start thinking about context. Anybody here love their web content management system? Exactly. Everybody hates their web content. They all suck. Nobody wants to be in the web content. Every web content management out there will fail. They all fail. That's not a fault of the technology. The technology's fine, but they will all fail. Also, your systems of engagement will fail. We talked about the change. Everything is changing so fast. You need to be built for speed, built for agility, built for flexibility. And if we start implementing content technology based on that, instead of this giant wish list of stuff that we can't even predict that we're going to need 2-3 years from now, we start implementing technology to address how we can put content out to different channels, measuring from a content perspective, then we're going to be a lot better off. Because then what we do is we start creating contextual ideas around how we can deliver content, and we start using technology to deliver contextual experiences, mobile, whether it's on an iPad, whether it's in a car, whether it's on a website, a desktop website, et cetera, et cetera. Technology optimizes experience. It's the only thing technology can do. The only thing technology can do is optimize the experience that our consumers will have. We have to create the content. We have to optimize the content as humans. And that's a really important distinction because in many cases, the vendors are going to come in and go, if you use our technology, we'll increase your conversion rate by 15%. No, they won't. You will increase the conversion rate by 15% because you have amazing content that you're delivering. You might get some lift from the experience that's now optimized. That consumer might get a better experience, but it's your content. So as we start to think about, and this is a clumsy diagram at the moment, but I use it because it's a way to start to think about contextualizing the content that we're creating for all of the different purposes that we have. So we have experience and content. Content is at the center of everything that we're doing. It is what we're measuring. It is how we're scoping as marketing organizations. And then we want to create an experience around that. And so what we do is we want to create explicit experiences. They come in and tell us they're a VP of marketing. They come in and tell us that they're a CIO. They come in and tell us that they're a manager. So we're going to deliver content based on that particular experience. Implicit, where we can infer something from their behavior. They come in via Google pay-per-click. They come in via a website refer on a banner ad. They come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon versus midnight. We can start to make inferences about that persona, that audience member as they come in, and make some content optimization based on that. Finally, there's the ambient, the data that we can gather from them as they actually experience, and then we start to understand what they're doing, and we get insight from that. We need to start looking at that data and how our audiences are consuming that content to really understand how to optimize those experiences. Right now, this is a number from that same report, 80% of all, and it's a CMO here, but it's really just all marketing organizations, we're depending solely on marketing researchers and competitive benchmarking. I love this story. I was working with 2 large B2B organizations. So, and I'll tell you one of them. One of them is, if you have a sticky note, you might know who they are. So 2 huge global organizations, B2B. And I went in and did a web experience where we're going in and helping them figure out the content and what they should be putting out on their website. And I said, how do you guys figure out what content should be on your website right now? Oh, we look at our main competitor, X company. Our main competitor, they're awesome at this. They're just so great at it. And in a weird twist of irony, literally 3 weeks later, I was at that company, Company X. And I walked in and I said, by the way, a totally different engagement. And I walked in and I said, by the way, how do you guys decide what content's going on your website? Oh, we look at 3M because they're the benchmark of whatever is great. So they're looking at each other and going down this spiral of mediocrity. And that's the way we do it. We go out and look at our competitors and we go, wow, they're doing it awesome. Let's do it that way. And what I'm suggesting is that maybe we actually shouldn't. We should start looking at what our audiences are actually doing and optimize that. If we start using data only to optimize experiences, we're going to perpetuate the biases that we already have. And that's just the way that data is. If we don't start actually talking to customers, understanding their needs, going out and understanding them, we will only perpetuate that. So just to put it into an example for you, some stark examples. Ambient context, just be observant. You don't have to have a sophisticated technology solution in order to do this. You just basically have to be observant. We can see it's raining if we look out the window. So we can start delivering content optimally to our consumers just literally by being observant. Quick example here. So this is Ocesa. Anybody from Mexico here? No, Ocesa is the biggest company in the entertainment business you've never heard of. So Ocesa in Mexico is like the Ticketmaster and Live Nation all mixed up into one. They basically sell you the concert ticket, and then you go to their organization to actually watch the show. And interestingly, they're unlike Ticketmaster here, they're actually a beloved brand in Mexico because they actually brought music back, live music back to the Mexican nation in the mid-90s. How do they do this? They are really observant with their content and their marketing. So their website, as an example, they know that because their users are not coming to their website for any other reason than to understand what concerts are coming up and all the information about that particular artist. So you can find an About Us page. You can find their executive management team page if you really look for it. You can find all the information in their press releases if you really look for it. But basically, their website's a giant calendar. That's all it is. That's their website. It's a calendar. And when you go in, you actually go into artists who are coming up, and you go in, and it's all content. It's not buy tickets now. It's not buy this now. It's not that. It's here's some information about that art. And for every artist and every concert, they actually do a video. So for Bob Dylan, and they do it in Spanish, and they actually play the music in the video, and they actually tell you something about Bob Dylan, about why you might care to go to Bob Dylan. His mother loved him, all that stuff, right? They don't really focus on Bob Dylan's weirder side. And then you can find a buy now if you really look for it, but they understand that the real goal of this page is to get you into the funnel. And so to go find tickets, you actually go click over to their Facebook page. And their Facebook page is where you buy tickets. Because once you like the page and you buy tickets, guess what they now know about you? They know what you like and the kind of concerts you go to. Now they can start optimizing content to you based on your mobile experience and your tablet experience and all the apps that they can now deliver to you. So they can start optimizing the experience just literally by being observant and looking at the way that their consumers are actually looking at their content and optimizing the experiences accordingly. Implicit context. So what can we infer from basic behavior? So what do we need here? We need to be empathic. We need to have empathy. Financial services company, B2B. So they do a content marketing program. These guys deal with, like, I like to call them, they service the 1%, right? So these guys are out there dealing with Morgan Stanley and all of the big banks out there. And basically, they help them understand really technical financial information about their stock choices. So they're basically, in a much more complex way, saying, you know, buy low, sell high. And so what do they do from a content marketing perspective? They do stuff like a book club, where they deliver recommendations on books that these guys should be reading. And they do events where they say, here's the cultural events you might want to be thinking about. Because they know that all of the information on the companies that they could deliver, that's all that's easy. They can go search Yahoo Finance or Bloomberg, and they can get all the information they need. What's not, the differentiated approach that they can take is making these guys feel really great about stuff that they don't have time for, which is understanding what books they should be reading. So the book club, they deliver in a video. And they deliver this video in a 5-minute, basically, book review. Here's a book you should be reading, and it makes you great at your job, and this is the awesome book. And basically, they understood, because what they watched was these guys are, like all of us, standing at the train station like this, you know, sitting, waiting for our date like this. We're looking for content, snackable content. And they understood that the people weren't watching all 30 minutes of it. So they just simply watched the behavior on their website and then started to say, you know what, we can just put a quick sniffer on the website to say, if you're coming from a mobile device, you get a 5-minute version of this book report. And at the end of the 5-minute version, it didn't really take them any longer to do. They just did a 5-minute version after the 30-minute version that they were creating. So the 5-minute version basically says, if you like this and you want to watch, you can click through here and you can watch the full version when you get back home or whatever you want to do. Engagement went up like by 250%, and they have really attributed this program with creating a loyalty of more than 95% among their customers. So it's not just about creating new leads, it's about engaging customers after they become customers to differentiate your approach to solving their problem. Last but not least, explicit context. What do they tell us that they want? What is explicitly? My favorite example of this is when I sign up for Hilton. This is so I was at the DoubleTree last night because there was no rooms here. And I go to the DoubleTree, and I'm a Hilton Honors member. And at some point when I signed up for Hilton Honors, I clicked a button that says I only want high floors. I said, I want high floors. Well, now every time I go to Hilton, they're trying to put me on some high floor, even if it means that I'm like miles away from everything. So if they can't fit me in, so it's not meeting my preference, but it's meeting my explicit. So what we need there is actual intimacy. We need to understand how the relationship changes over time. I'll give you an example. So this is a B2B company, software technology company. And we did a really interesting thing. It was mentioned before about talking and learning about personas and how personas are really important, and I could not agree with that more. Understanding your audience and understanding them as real people, rounded 360 degrees people, is so important. And these guys did this. What they did was they wanted to understand how these people were really behaving and what they understood about the brand and their approach. So what we did was we sent a guy out, a product guy, well, not a marketing guy. We sent a product guy out to go sit with the customers, not to watch them use the interface, not to understand how they use the product, just to sit with them and be with them as people and understand. We call it the Get to Know You Summer Tour. He basically went to 30 customers, 10 cities over 12 weeks, and it was just about connecting with these people, sitting with these people as people together to understand each other's needs. He came back with, and he took pictures and audio and all this stuff. And first of all, that was just amazing. I mean, the output of that was just amazing. For the sales guys, for all the CRM people, to see this wall covered with their customers, of them in their sort of natural habitat, as it were, was just really, really valuable. The most valuable thing, though, was they didn't talk about product, but they talked about what value they could bring. And what he found out was about 6 out of every 10 of the 10 customers he talked to, they had done this training program. So as part of the software rollout, they had this training program, how to use the software. And it was a train the trainer program. Here's a program of you can now train your people on how to use the software. And literally because they didn't have time to come up with their own, they went out on the web and they found some training kit from a train-a-trainer training kit, modified that with their stuff, and that's what they sent out. These guys started to use that training kit to develop, and they had sort of hacked around it to build training programs for other software programs because it was good enough, it was so good that they were getting value out of it. So they were delivering training programs using the company's training kit that they gave them for other software. So these guys then went, wow, that's hugely insightful. They go back and they actually hired a private trainer to come in and build a how to train the trainer kit, their own version of the train the trainer kit. Really sophisticated, wonderful, robust, build this thing. They've immediately attributed this to a huge jump in loyalty from their customers. And they're a SaaS-based solution, software as a service-based solution. So loyalty for them is huge. That it was just something simple that came out of just sitting down with customers. I can't tell you how many B2B organizations I walk into and I talk to marketers and I say, when was the last time you sat down with a customer and no hands go up? And I say, why haven't you talked to a customer? And they say something like, sales won't let us. And that's not marketing, that's insanity. You've got to talk to customers and understand what they're doing. And last but not least, I'll talk about chaos, the embrace of chaos. So it's been said on the panels, it was said during the sessions, in Tim's session in the morning, about the idea of creating content that matters, content that actually differentiates you as an organization. Jeff Ernst at Forrester actually said this really well, defining content marketing and the power of content these days. People don't buy into your product or service anymore. They buy into your approach to solving their problem. And content can be the driver of that differentiation. Content and how you solve a business's problem, and specifically people in that business, can be a huge thing. So right now, 75% of the data that we use as marketers is used to facilitate more transactions instead of developing deeper insights into how we can service customers better. That number's got to flip. We have to start using data to develop deeper relationships with the customers that we're getting and the customers that we have rather than just facilitating more. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into an organization and instead of focusing on more leads, we start focusing on getting better leads, using content to develop more education. Where a customer will come in, and especially in a B2B organization where you have a lot of products, and the easy transaction for sales guys who are getting bonused on the number of transactions that they do is to sell the cheapest or the easiest to sell widget. And then the product manager or the product brand manager, whatever you call them, goes into that customer and says, hey, you bought widget from us. Would you like to buy widget B? And the customer goes, I don't even know that you guys are the widget company to me. I already have a widget B supplier. Why would I buy that from you? And so you're stuck because you've been focused on too many transactions selling that one widget and you've forgotten to educate the consumer on the entire approach of your organization and how it can solve their problem holistically. And that's what this understanding how consumers and the relationship that we have with them is so important. And most important is that the engagement is important. The systems to scale that can come over time. Beth Comstock, there's no one from G here, right? I always ask that because I'm kind of in a weird, creepy, stalky mode with Beth Comstock right now. Because she's, to me, one of the smartest CMOs out there. I mean, she's just absolutely brilliant, the stuff that they're doing with content and how they're using that to drive success of selling things like jet engines and generators and all kinds of things. Not only from an SEO perspective, but from a storytelling, differentiating, demand generation, content creation process. What she says about the creation of content and the process of it is just something that resonates so deeply with me. She talks about how, she says, we delegate what's comfortable, right? Or uncomfortable, rather. Process is what makes us comfortable. We're organized. We have process. We can predict results. And storytelling and creating good content is not predictable. It is by nature creating conflict because we're trying to create, as Tim so aptly put, that contrast. We're trying to make people feel uncomfortable so that they care about what we have to say. We're not creating just commoditize the top 5 reasons to do this or the top 10 reasons to do that. We have a passionate point of view about something. And what we do as marketers these days is we outsource that. We insource all of the, let's create a spreadsheet and blog, and we don't really care about stuff. And then we outsource all of the super creative stuff because that's uncomfortable for us and we don't want to be seen with that necessarily if it fails. We have to require the mental and physical space to create amazing content, and that's part of that original putting content at the center of what we're doing. Smash it, stomp it to smithereens, iterate, reiterate, and basically have a process that allows for the creation of content to not only succeed, but also to fail. One of the other guy that I have a creepy, stalky thing with is Jonathan Mildenhall, who's going to be speaking at Content Marketing World this year. He's the head of worldwide creative for Coca-Cola. And by the way, if you haven't seen the Content 2020 project from Coca-Cola, I don't care if you're B2B or B2C, it is the most amazing 24 minutes. If you're interested in content marketing, it's the most amazing 24 minutes of video that you'll watch. It's just so just go on YouTube and search for Content 2020. Take you 20 minutes. It's just awesome. When I interviewed him about that, I got the chance to sit down and talk to him about it. I said, okay, well, you've just basically outlined your entire content marketing strategy for the next, well, 6 years up until 2020. I said, why did you do that? He said, because here's the thing. He said, we are the largest buyer of media services and consulting services around content and advertising on the planet. We buy more than anybody else. He said, so with this new content strategy, and it's purely focused on creating engaging stories with consumers, he said, I had a choice. I can go around and teach every agency and every office how to do this and spend the next 2 years of my life basically teaching this, or I can actually just put it out on YouTube and get to work. And that's what he's done. And in that video, he talks about a process of creating content. He talks about it as 70-20-10 investment model. And the 70-20-10 investment model is basically this. 70% of the investment goes to the content that they have to create. He knows that they have to create, they create it, right? They have to create polar bears and all kinds of stuff and commercials and coupons and all that kind of stuff. They have to create it. 20% of the content that they create is what he calls the weird sort of out-of-the-box stuff. We get pitched, as you might expect, from brands who want to do co-branded content things with us. We think about weird influencers we might want to get engaged in our content. We think about that stuff, and we do that 20% of the time. He said the 10%, he said, is the weird, out-of-the-box, just crazy stuff that's going to succeed spectacularly or fall flat on its face, and we have no idea. And we just have no idea, and that's okay. And I said, oh, that 10% must be the really expensive stuff. And he said, no, absolutely not. He said, exactly the opposite. He said, the 10%, he said, is usually the least expensive to actually execute and usually the easiest to execute, quite frankly. He said, the hard part, and this is what I challenge all B2B organizations, and I know this is hard, but I challenge you as you go forward from these days and all of the great information that was delivered on the panel, Tim's excellent presentation of earlier this afternoon, and you wrote down all these ideas, and to Tim's point, you wrote down lots of squiggly lines and bullets and all that kind of stuff. And Tim, I apologize for all my stock art there. As you do that, think about how you might spend 10% of your time, 5 hours a week, either by yourself or with your team, put the cell phones in a basket, and whiteboard and think up crazy, weird, engaging, amazing, and wonderfully resonant content for your audiences and how you can actually create that. So what is your 10%? And as you start to take away the ideas from today, I hope you'll take away that. So with that, thank you very much. And